Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Sleep Science Friday. So today we're talking about how the coronavirus pandemic has affected our sleep with Dr. Christine Blume. Dr. Blume is a sleep scientist at the Center for Chronobiology in Basel, Switzerland, and is also a member of the Early Career Researcher Network Committee at the ESRS. Her research focuses on circadian rhythms and cognitive processes during sleep, as well as the effects of artificial light on sleep and how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected our sleep patterns. Thank you for joining us today. So in the past few weeks, we've had some really exciting announcements on the possibility of 2 COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna. This comes nearly after a year of a global pandemic that has really upended our lives and has led to a lot of stress. And this stress and uncertainty has created many changes in daily living. That's also had a huge impact on our sleep, including insomnia, which I've heard some people call corona insomnia, as well as decreased sleep quality. So this is kind of critical because a well-functioning immune system is also linked to getting proper sleep, with less sleep associated with a higher risk of getting sick, as well as jeopardizing the effectiveness of vaccines. So this year, you and your colleagues published a paper in Current Biology on how the COVID-19 lockdown has affected our sleep and our rest activity rhythms, which had some actually surprising findings. Could you please tell us a little bit about this study?
Yeah, of course. So when the lockdown sort of was approaching in mid-March or early March already, then I just thought, this is such a major change in all of our lives. And obviously, sleep-wake rhythms are not only determined by our internal biological clock and so internal or biological rhythms, but also by social rhythms, that is, working hours, working schedules, whether you do shift work or not, leisure time activities, etc. So that was why we then set out to investigate how what we call the lockdown, how that actually changed our sleep-wake patterns. And then what we found in a study where 435 participants took part in Switzerland, Germany, and Austria was primarily that social jet lag, so the misalignment between internal biological and external social rhythms, that the social jet lag decreased. So that was one of the major findings. But then, in addition, we also found that people actually slept more. So sleep time, or time they spent to sleep, was prolonged. And I think these are two findings that are from chronobiological and sleep health perspective really positive, because it means that besides people sleeping longer, their sleep-wake rhythms will rather get to internal biological than external social rhythms. And in addition to that, we found that especially later chronotypes, so those who are at a particular disadvantage in normal life, because social rhythms in our society are rather made for early chronotypes, they especially benefited from what we call the lockdown. And our results were consistently linked to more work being accomplished from home, and also some people obviously work less. So this was something actually surprisingly positive. But then on the other hand, what we also found, what you also already mentioned, is that sleep quality very slightly decreased. So in our sample, it was only very slightly, probably also because generally our participants were rather healthy sleepers. But then this decrease in sleep quality was especially linked also to the self-perceived burden, which obviously was an issue in this unprecedented situation of the pandemic. On a more positive note, what we then also found was that people who spent more time outside under the open sky, and if we remember, at least in Europe, the weather was fantastic, it was warm, there was a lot of sunshine during the first lockdown. So that in combination also with physical activity was able to limit the negative effects of the lockdown on sleep quality. And although our study was obviously a retrospective study, because although later on you think you could have seen it coming, no one really expected that we would get something like a lockdown. We see our results confirmed now by other studies, for example, by Ken Wright et al., or a recent study from the Netherlands by Koczewska and colleagues, or also a study from Argentina by Leone et al. So it's really worldwide studies that all go into the same direction, actually.
So you said that in the spring that people were able to kind of counteract some of the negative effects that might happen regarding their sleep, because it was starting to get brighter, so they have more light and they can also exercise outside. But now that we're moving into the autumn and winter months with longer darkness hours of darkness, and also people might not want to work out as much outside. What are your thoughts on how this has affected or will disrupt the circadian rhythms and ways that people can kind of balance their health with sleep?
Yeah, so daylight, and particularly natural daylight, as well as also exercising, physical exercising, are two factors that independently already earlier have been shown to be beneficial for sleep. Particularly, for example, people who spend more time under the open sky in natural daylight, they will tend to go to sleep a little earlier, so experience a phase advance regarding their circadian rhythms, and usually also report better sleep quality, and also when they exercise more, then they usually also report better sleep quality. So I think it's definitely two factors that are important, and obviously now the situation in winter with, you know, sun setting way earlier than it did in April, for example, and May, that is challenging. However, I would suggest to, you know, sort of see it as a daily routine that may then also benefit circadian rhythms and sleep. So one, especially when we work from home, then what we might do is go for a walk outside for 20 minutes, half an hour in the morning, especially because we're not commuting anymore. So some of us definitely now experience less time under the open sky. But include a walk in the morning, or run even in the morning, as well as perhaps a walk in the afternoon or early evening, in our daily habits. And I think a particularly nice way of thinking about this is to use these routines to really start the working day, but then also finish the working day. And that is not, and are not related to circadian rhythms of sleep, but it also gives you some time to prepare yourselves for work, but then also to sort of detach yourself from work. So I would like to think of it as a daily routine that also includes exposure to the natural daylight as well as physical exercising.
I think that's a really good point. I've been working from home and I can definitely see that my work hours are stretching because I wake up and my desk is there, and then I get off work and I'm still in my house. So
Yes.
I think this is a great point to maybe get out in the morning for a short walk, and then afterwards to get out again. And this also helps to create this rhythm. So this is this is definitely something I will start doing. What are your thoughts on using like sun lamps for some people?
Yeah, I mean, these light therapy lamps, which are, for example, also used for the treatment of seasonal affective disorder or seasonal depression, they can be helpful. I would, however, always recommend to rather use a natural daylight. And although it sometimes does not feel as if it was, however, the light levels outside, or even on foggy, overcast, cloudy days, rainy days, they are higher by orders of magnitude than the light we get inside. So I would always prioritize natural daylight, and it's for free, by the way. So natural daylight over solutions like light therapy lamps. However, of course, if you for some reason cannot leave the house, or are not allowed to leave the house, which sometimes also happens in these months, then light therapy lamps might be helpful. You could also, however, if you have large windows facing south, for example, then you can also just spend time close to the window. That's also helpful. But definitely, yeah. it's a possibility.
What about also taking these melatonin or vitamin D supplements? Because this has also been shown as like treatment within coronavirus, but also some people have said it might help prevent, but it's also very important for your circadian rhythm.
Yeah, so for melatonin, I think what we have to know is that melatonin is a hormone which is secreted by our bodies, usually some hours after sunset during these days. It's a natural hormone, and taking melatonin will only be effective in case you have a relative deficit of melatonin. Otherwise, it won't be effective. That can, for example, it can also be helpful during jet lag. That is just when your melatonin levels are high at the wrong time, and therefore when you go to sleep you might suffer from a relative deficit of melatonin, or it might also, especially in older people, occur that they have a melatonin deficit, and then you might supplement the melatonin. However, I'd say in most healthy young adults it should not be much of a problem. And then I mean, I think Donald Trump, for example, also received melatonin, and I've just looked it up. There are a few trials, clinical trials, that are investigating whether it might be helpful in treating coronavirus or COVID-19. However, I mean, it's unlikely that it's going to be a cure. Yeah, so one can try, but I wouldn't really, put high hopes on it. It's a bit different for vitamin D, which I think when we talk about natural daylight is definitely a topic, because vitamin D is produced also obviously within your body, but then it needs sunlight to reach the skin. And some people suffer from low vitamin D levels because they do not get a lot of sunlight during winter. And then there are studies in which vitamin D has been effective in preventing acute respiratory infections. So that is definitely something that would speak in favor of supplementing vitamin D. However, you can also easily overdose vitamin D, and therefore I would definitely not recommend it without having talked to a doctor, and possibly also without having had your vitamin D levels measured. This can be done, and then you can, with your doctor, agree what dosage you may need or may not need.
Oh, that's surprising. I had no idea you could actually overdose on vitamin D. That's that's good to know. I've been taking some supplements, but I'm not sure how effective this is. I should probably talk to my doctor. Yeah, so my next question is the pandemic has not only preoccupied us during the waking hours, but this increased stress has also led to some interesting developments, including corona dreams. So this is really interesting. There was that article in the New York Times where someone said that they imagined that the virus was some kind of musical, I don't know, note or something. They had to play music to fix the disease, which I found very poetic. But it's kind of interesting the types of dreams people are having. So what are your insights regarding this phenomenon?
We've seen a lot, especially the hashtag Corona Dreams in the social media. And I think actually there was a first article in the New York Times reporting on these Corona dreams in the beginning of April already. And so what people report under this hashtag, and what has also now been subject to research, is that people say they dream more vividly, they dream more bizarre dreams. They also dream more, and they can remember their dreams better. Now, we can of course ask from a scientific perspective, why could that be the case? I mean, there are several theories about dreams, and some are, for example, related to an evolutionary perspective, where they say that perhaps in dreams, we sort of prepare for the future. Dreams allow us to better handle current situations. But also there is this continuity hypothesis, which just says that daily lives just extend into the dream world. And I think this is what we all experience. And from this perspective, it's not really astonishing that also corona-related contents do appear in our dreams. Now, why do people report they dream more bizarre things and they can remember their dreams better? I think there are actually 3 scientific reasons we can think of. So the first is actually that several studies now have shown that we actually sleep a bit more. And because we do not only dream during rapid eye movement or REM sleep, although we tend to have the most bizarre dreams in the sleep stage, but we actually dream the whole night. Having more sleep also always means that we also dream more. Then furthermore, what we've also seen is that when people sleep more, they especially extend the sleep window in the morning hours. And in the morning hours, we tend to have more REM sleep. So it's likely also that they do experience actually more vivid dreams, which are then also easier to remember. Now, besides this, I think another aspect is stress. So this is an unprecedented situation for all of us, and it's very natural that this puts us under stress. Especially I know also the second lockdown, which is already happening in some countries, but also obviously the first, when the whole thing was even a bit newer. Now, what we know is that stress generally makes more bad dreams, and bad dreams are remembered more easily because they have a different emotional tone. But then also stress creates more arousals in sleep. It sometimes also makes sleep less deep, less consistent. It means that we wake up more often. And then because we can only remember dreams that we do wake up from, that also means that we have more opportunities to remember dreams, which might feed into this feeling of dreaming more. And the last aspect, I think, which is not to be neglected actually, is that we know that focusing on dreams itself can make us remember dreams better. And now when we have these, New York Times articles, or we have these hashtags, then we do focus our attention on our dreams, and all of us together may then lead to us remembering our dreams better and speaking about something like corona dreams. Now, recently there has been published a study from the US where they asked about 3,000 participants, and I think the aim was to really draw a representative sample. They asked 3,000 people about their dreams, and I think 12% of the people said they generally dream a bit worse, 8% even said they dream better, but 92% said, well, we can't detect any COVID-related content in our dreams. And I think that sort of points a bit into the direction that from what we've seen on the social media, and obviously dreams is something, which is very nice to talk about as well. It's, something very fantastic. But that actually from what we see on the social media, we might overestimate the phenomenon a little. Yeah, but I'm excited what future research we'll see on this.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I have the feeling that I have had more dreams related to corona, but yeah, I'm not actually sure. Maybe also like during my normal, like other stressful periods, I have a lot of dreams about whatever I'm stressed about. But I've definitely had some very weird corona, very active dreams.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately someone who doesn't remember dreams. So I mean, this is it's a trait. So some people just remember their dreams, others don't, and I belong to the latter group, so I can't really participate in that discussion. But I've also had people say they have really strange and more dreams.
Yeah, I think I also do wake up a bit more, and I definitely sleep in a lot more. So yeah, I'll have to maybe start keeping a dream diary to keep track of this.
Yeah. So actually, we would also recommend a dream diary, and then work with your dreams when you really suffer from those dreams. So when you suffer, then you should write the dreams down, and then during wakefulness, find an active solution for the situation that is frightening you in the dream. And then you should rehearse this solution with the dream during wakefulness. And then hopefully, in line with also the continuity hypothesis, this is going to be picked up in your dream and it's going to be less frightening.
I will have to definitely try this out the next time, the next time I have one of these dreams. Yeah, it seems like the pandemic is really just also increasing burdens on mental health in general. And I think this is good advice to keep a dream diary and then also kind of work through these problems. Do you have any other advice on, yeah, improving sleep quality or how people can kind of, yeah, help mitigate like changes to their daily rhythms?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. One thing we've certainly discussed about is getting enough daylight and also exercising. And I think these are two important factors apart from the usual sleep hygiene rules. So even when we're working from home, and I mean, I'm often not the best example because then I sometimes get caught up and work, and then I work until way too late, and then I shift my sleep window. So this is something not to be recommended. You should try to keep a regular sleep-wake cycle, especially if you feel that you have trouble sleeping. Also something, it's more a bit of an exercise, which I really like when, you know, in these times it can often happen that you have so many thoughts in mind and you can't really get rid of them when you lie in bed, and that actually prevents you from falling asleep. So something which I always recommend and which I really like doing is, like, I imagine I'm looking into the sky. It's a blue sky, but there are large clouds, white clouds. And then every thought that comes to my mind, I put it on a cloud and just let it drift away. That usually helps me to handle these thoughts and then also fall asleep quicker.
That's a really nice way of envisioning it. And yeah, so then you're not engaging with it, but you're kind of just letting it float off. I will have to also keep this in mind. Yeah, I often spend a lot of nights where I'm just thinking about the next day, and it would be
Yeah,
good to send these thoughts
yeah, yeah.
away.
I mean, obviously, so then if, you know, if the sleep hygiene rules and cognitive techniques like this, if they don't help, then I would also definitely advise seeing your GP and your doctor and talking to him or her about it, about your problems. And then, I mean, what we then recommend is not medication in the first place, although this is often a bit easier, but we recommend cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which can especially be helpful. So I think in this pandemic, because it gives you tools to change cognition about sleep, but also to change your behavior, and should enable you to again learn to sleep in a healthy and good way. So it offers a bit more of a long-term perspective than medication.
Yeah, and I was also reading that now is actually a fairly good time to do CBTI because you can also do it online.
Exactly. I think also, so definitely in the UK there is something called Sleepio. I think it's even offered by the NHS. And in the German-speaking countries, I think Get Sleep should have been launched by the colleagues in Freiburg in Germany. And that is also an online program, which is probably very similar to Sleepio. And yeah, actually, online CBTI has been shown to be as effective in most participants as CBTI in presence.
Yeah, I will have to include these references in this article. I will have a look at this. Yeah, so the last question I have for you is that I see that you're very active in science communication. You're a regular expert on sleep-related topics for a German public radio station that focuses on science information and science news, and that you also regularly publish articles for the general public. So I find that this is really important now, as misinformation is causing a lot of distrust of scientists. So do you have any tips for how scientists can actually effectively communicate their research and how they can get more involved and bring science to the public sphere?
Yeah, so I think the first step is to not think that your research is not interesting or not important enough to be mentioned, or that the journal is not good enough, etc. I think especially in females that also often relate to the imposter syndrome, thinking that what you do is not worth being talked about. But I think, yeah, when you overcome this, then you will notice that actually there is always someone who's interested in what you do. And I think especially Twitter has a great science communication bubble or community where you will always find someone who's interested in what you do. So I think this is a great way to start. But then also contact your press offices of your institution, of your university, gets involved in things like Children's University or some displays. And then I think also something that is sometimes a bit underestimated is you need to be findable, right? So I can highly recommend just having a simple web page, having that indexed in Google, so you actually become findable with your research and your topic. And I mean, I was lucky enough that I was contacted about 2 years by this radio station, and they've been contacting me over and over again. And so I got the opportunity to really talk a lot about sleep and circadian rhythms and on all sorts of topics. I think it's sometimes rather than a challenge to include that in our daily work schedules, because it can be quite time consuming. But I also try to, so on the one hand, it's obviously something I like doing. And you get very immediate reward for it when you get positive feedback, which is not often the situation in science. It's rather long-term, rewards. Yeah, but I also try to always see it as an opportunity to really look over the brim of my teacup and learn about topics that I don't usually handle in my daily work. And I think when you do that, then sort of you build up also knowledge around your topic, which can be really, really helpful. Yeah. So I'd say just, perhaps in the first place, try Twitter. Some people also start trying TikTok, which I don't. So I'm still, not yet, at least. And then, just talk what you find is important. And it's always going to be someone who's interested in that.
I think you also make a good point about how when you're also talking to the public that you do, you look kind of outside your field, because you have to kind of see how your work fits into the public space. And that being able to communicate it also helps you learn more about your topic. At least that's how I feel. Yeah, because you're also having to explain and talk about things that maybe aren't the focus of your work.
Yeah. And I think, it's a good training to also communicate your research findings to the general public. And I think it's just one very important aspect, especially perhaps in these days, is that you have to know what you know and what you don't know. And you have to be able to say that what you stand for what you say. And I think, well, especially in Germany, I know what we've seen is that, even scientists were criticized for communicating about science. And I think this is really bad. But I think as long as you know what you know and what you don't know, and you feel sure about what you communicate, it's always going to be right.
Yeah, this is an excellent point that, communicating what you know, but also knowing what you don't know, so you can.
And also talking about it.
Yes, yes, it's definitely.
It's not a shame in science when we don't know things. This is science.
Yeah, like the whole point of science is discovering new things. So it's nice also to be able to, when you don't know something, to be able to know where to look for the answer. So that's really great advice, actually. It was really great talking to you. Do you have any last comments or something?
No, I just think, so if someone is interested in science communication and needs some advice, just write me an email. So I'm very open to any inquiries. Just drop me a line and I'll be happy to answer. Also, obviously not only science communication, but also anything else. Yeah, I'm always happy about receiving emails from people who want to discuss science.
Yeah, we will definitely include your contact information and also your Twitter in this article. And yeah, thank you for joining us today. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, Doris. Thank you for the invitation.